Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to ET Health World webinar. To present this, I welcome Dr. V. Mohan, Chairman and Chief of Diabetology at Dr. Mohan's Diabetes Specialty Center, Chennai. There will be a presentation on the topic, followed by a question and answer session wherein you can submit text questions to today's presenter by typing questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect and address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Now, I request Dr. Mohan to start the presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rashmi, and thank you to ET Health World for inviting me to make this presentation. Today is very special because it happens to be World Diabetes Day, and therefore Happy World Diabetes Day to all viewers. I look forward to an interactive session with you. I'll talk about the topic reversal of diabetes is possible. I have no conflict of interest to declare because all the funding for these studies come from government-funded sources. I'd also like to thank my group of staff at my institutions for all the work that they have done. What I'm going to do is to first show you how the diabetes trends in India have changed. And literally just last night, we had the latest figures published by the International Diabetes Federation. So this will be the first time ever, I think, that you will be seeing the new figures which came in around midnight last night, which shows you the latest figures for India. But if you look at the trends in diabetes over time, it's very interesting because you've had studies right from 1966, 1970 onwards. These are patchy studies, probably done in one place. The whole state is covered in the figure, but it's not that whole of Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka or Orissa was studied. It would have been one small study somewhere. But the message is clear. And what this series of pictorial maps are going to show you is that green represents up to 4% prevalence of diabetes, yellow is up to 7%, orange is up to 12%, and red is about 12%. So you can see that whichever study has been done in India in the 1960s and 70s, there were only greens. Subsequently, yellows started coming, this is the next decade, 76 to 85. By 86 to 96, a few oranges have started coming, the greens have started reducing. And then the next 10 years, if you see, for the first time now, reds have started coming up to 2006 if you go. The greens are slowly fading away, especially in the urban areas, although in rural areas there's still some greens. And then if you look at 2018, there are in some of the northern states and the middle of the country also, there are some greens. But for example, in southern India, for example, there's no more green even in rural areas. And if you look at urban areas, all red. In many parts of the country, it is red. The white only tells you that we don't have data from those states, but then now I'll show you that there is data coming up through one of the studies which we have done. Now I want to go back in history to the year 1971-72. The man you see in the picture is my father, Professor M. Vishwanathan, who was the father of diabetes in India because he started the first diabetic clinic here in Chennai at the Stanley Medical College and Hospital in the year 1948. In 1971, I joined him as a first-year medical student and started working on diabetes. And when we published our results, the first results in the 1970s, my father had a hypothesis that diabetes in India was not very common, but when the Indians migrated to other countries, they had not only more diabetes than the Indians in India, but also more diabetes than the local population. And this is shown in the next presentation where you can see that when they go to the UK, Tanzania, Singapore, Malaysia, Fiji, Mauritius, South Africa, now we're talking about double digits in diabetes figures going up to 12%, 16%, and so on. Where, for example, if you take Singapore, when it was nearly 13% in the Indians, in the Malays, it might have been 8 or 9%, and in the Chinese, it would have been still lower, say 6 or 8%. So in every one of these countries, Indians had the highest prevalence of diabetes. So my father's theory was that Indians get diabetes when they migrate abroad, but they don't have too much of diabetes within India. But that started changing even within his lifetime when the diabetes prevalence started going up, as I showed you in the earlier graphs. But those graphs, as I told you, are based on patchy studies, small studies, not real statewide or nationwide studies, and they use different methodologies, a lot of flaws. But if you look at this table, you'll see that the urban prevalence of diabetes increased from 2%, 4%, 5, 11, 12, 14, 16, and the latest studies are showing a prevalence rate in Delhi of 25% and in Chennai 23%. Now, these are almost 10 times higher than what my father had seen in the 1970s. And rural India also little behind, but again going up from 1 to 6, 14, 16%. And in some rural areas now, like in Kerala, actually being higher than in urban areas. So when this shift occurred, I then asked the question, what about my father's theory that when Indians migrate to other countries, they get more of diabetes? So does that mean that when we have 22% and 25% now in Chennai and Delhi, they reach 40%, 50% in other countries? Or is it at all possible that what he had predicted at that time was right for that time, but now things have changed and we actually have more diabetes in Indians in India than in Indians living abroad? To answer this question, we collaborated with a group in the United States led by Dr. Alka Kanaya and Anjali Gujral and Venkat and others, where we looked at the Indians living in San Francisco. As you know, the Bay Area is the IT hub of the world, the Silicon Valley. And that's where a lot of people from India live, particularly from South India. So we're able to get people who were matched from, especially people from Chennai, who are living in San Francisco. And we looked at what is their prevalence in San Francisco in the Indians there. This is not in the white population. The white population is much, much, much lower prevalence. But in Indians there, shown in yellow, and the Indians living in Chennai, there's a representative sample of the whole of Chennai, were shown in red. And age group 40 years upwards we took because they didn't have data below 40 years. They don't screen below 40 years in the US. We screen from 20 years upwards here. So if you match them, you'll find the Indians in Chennai now are actually having more diabetes than the Indians living in San Francisco. It's the exact opposite of what my father and I saw in the 1970s. This is good news and bad news. The good news is that the Indians in San Francisco and those who are living abroad have become conscious. They started exercising and their rates of diabetes have gone down. The bad news is that in Chennai and other cities in India, we are still focusing on pollution, dengue, malaria, TB. We still haven't got to the agenda of non-communicable diseases. So it is rising very rapidly within India. Another way of looking at it is, forget about San Francisco for a moment and look at just Chennai. You know that apart from diabetes, people also have pre-diabetes. This is where the reversal part comes in. If you take age 55 and above, those living in and Delhi is exactly the same as Chennai. So if you take Delhi or Chennai, at age 55 plus, almost 70% of the population has either diabetes or pre-diabetes. So if you're going to prevent diabetes, you better start early. By the time you come to 55, 60 years, almost 3/4 of the population has already got diabetes and pre-diabetes. What are you going to revert when they already got there? So we have to start early. That is what we learned from this particular study. Now, I showed you a lot of data, a lot of graphs, but I also mentioned that those were patchy, isolated studies. It's about 10 years ago, with the support of the Indian Council of Medical Research and the Government of India, the Department of Health Research, we undertook the largest epidemiological study ever done in the world in the field of diabetes. This is called as the ICMR India Diabetes Study or the ICMR INDIAB study. We wanted to sample the whole country, the entire 1.2, 1.3 billion people, take a representative sample of 124,000 people, 4,000 in each state, urban, rural, in the same manner, at the same time, look at the whole country. As I said, this is the largest study ever done. No diabetes study has gone above 50,000 people. This is 124,000 people. The primary objective, of course, is to study the national prevalence of diabetes and pre-diabetes and also study hypertension, coronary artery disease, etc. Now, we have completed the study, almost completed the whole study. As you can see, we have come to almost 1 lakh people, 99,596. We have got 4 more states left, and those are being completed now. Hopefully, by the end of 2021, the whole INDIAB study will be over. We did it in different phases. It took 10 years for us to get there, but then ultimately we have done the whole country. Okay. The first phase was published in Diabetology in 2011. And then when we reached the halfway mark in 2017, when the 15 states of India were completed, we published this in the Lancet Diabetes Endocrinology. This is one of the most well-quoted papers, where we looked at the 57,000 people in 15 states of India. The message which came through is that India is as heterogeneous with respect to diabetes as she is with respect to any other parameter that you can study. Culture, religion, language, you study anything, socioeconomic status, India is diverse and heterogeneous. And so too with diabetes. If you look at the prevalence of diabetes in Bihar, it is 4%, whereas in Chandigarh, it was 13%. Now, this is in the first 15 states. I've got worse news for you to come recently, unpublished, to tell you that in states like Kerala, Goa, and a few other states, it's now crossed 20% of the population. You may say, oh, already said 20%. That was only Chennai. That is only in the city. That is only in Delhi. It is only in the metropolitan cities, not in the whole state. The whole of Tamil Nadu at that time was only 10%. The rural was less than 10%. So the average came to 10%. Now we're talking about the whole state, urban, rural, all put together exceeding 20%. And in the cities now going very, very high indeed. So these are really frightening figures. Now, one of the things we showed in the Lancet paper that it's related to the gross domestic product or the GDP of each state. If you take a state like Tamil Nadu or a union territory like Chandigarh, where the GDP is shown in blue and the red bar or the red graph is the diabetes prevalence. So as the GDP increases, the diabetes rates also increase. So the richer the state, obviously they eat more, they're more affluent, they put on more weight, and they have more diabetes. But that's changing. Now, if you look at the richer states, again, look at Chandigarh, look at Punjab, look at Tamil Nadu, what is shown here is urban and rural, and the pink represents the low socioeconomic status, and the blue represents the middle and the higher socioeconomic status. So if you see in rural areas, it is uniform. It's the rich people who still have diabetes in the villages, because in the villages, people are so poor, they're so thin, they are farmers, they're working in the field, that their diabetes rates are still low, although it's changing. In rural Kerala, for example, they have more diabetes than urban Kerala. But let's leave that alone. So in the villages of India, as far as INDAB goes, still it's the rich people who have diabetes. Look at the richer states in the urban areas. Look at Chandigarh, look at Punjab, look at Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra. It is the pink bar which is actually higher than the blue bar. So what does it mean? In these states, in urban areas, in Delhi, in Chennai, in Mumbai, and so on, it is the poor people who are now having more of diabetes. Now, this is very worrying because the poor people cannot even afford to have the treatment, and they have a chronic disease like diabetes. Imagine if it affects the kidney or something, it's very difficult to control. And that is why prevention of diabetes is very important. And that's why reversal of diabetes is very important. And nowhere is it more important and relevant than to talk about it today, being World Diabetes Day. That's what is shown there. Next. Now, this is the figures I told you just released last night from the International Diabetes Federation. In fact, 2 weeks from now, we'll have the IDF, the International Diabetes Federation World Congress, which comes every 2 years in Korea, in Busan, where this would be officially released. But they've kind of released it unofficially, and it's available now in the public. So just look at, so India is in second place, and China is in first place in the year 2019. But today, the figures which I'm telling you and announcing it for the first time ever now is that India now has 77 million people with diabetes. And look at the numbers by 2030, 101 million, and then by 2045, it's 134 million. These figures keep changing because in the last IDF Atlas, which was published in 2017, they said that by 2045, India will be ahead of China and China will be number 2. But here, 2 years later, they've suddenly changed it now. They're saying that China will be number 1, India will be number 2. To me, it doesn't matter who is number 1. In fact, if China wants to take that position, they can take it. The gold medal goes to them. I'm very happy to take the silver medal in this one particular case. But I'm worried about the 134 million people who will get diabetes in India. And these, I'm sure, are conservative figures. In 2 years, they've changed all the numbers. So 40 years from now, how is it going? 30 years from now, how is it going? Nobody can predict. All we know is that every projection which has been made has been completely wrong. And they're wrong by 100%. So we'll probably have 150 million or 200 million people by the time with diabetes. Who knows? Okay, unless we do something like they did in California. If we start doing something, we can probably reverse it. And that's what this talk is all about. So why is diabetes so common? We and others have described over the years through our research something called as the South Asian phenotype, or the Indian phenotype. What is this phenotype? We get diabetes at much younger age. We don't have to be fat to get it. Lower body mass index, we can get it. I was the first to report in 1984, to show that Indians have higher insulin levels than the Europeans. This is my work in the UK when I worked there. We also did clamp studies and showed that they are more insulin resistant. More recently, in the last 5 years, we have shown how Indians lose beta cell function very fast. So they very rapidly move from normal to pre-diabetes to diabetes, much faster than described in any other ethnic group. So we have, I'm not going to bore you with all these characteristics, that at least 12 different characteristics which comprise what we call as the South Asian phenotype. And there is evidence for each one of these. They're based on about 100 papers which have been published on this to prove this. Suffice to say that we have this propensity to develop diabetes, which is much more than in any other country. Is this due to genetic factors or environmental factors? Very tempting to say it's due to genetic factors. Oh, we are born with it and therefore we will get it. My question to you then would be, I showed you the figures in 1970 when I started my career with my father. Why did Chennai have 2% diabetes then and now have 25%? Everybody's gene in Chennai changed in the last 30 years. Mine didn't. I was alive then and I'm alive now. So my same genes I had then. So why did diabetes change? So while genetic factors are important, they are not the cause for the diabetes epidemic. It's the environment. But just to tell you that there are some new genes which we have discovered. This is a very important breakthrough paper we published in Nature Genetics, where we discovered 6 new genes. And these genes are associated with diabetes in Indians, in South Asians, and not with Chinese, Japanese, or the white European population, or with any other race. So yes, we're finding some new genes, very exciting. We find all this, but how much of the diabetes epidemic does it explain? Less than 5%. So 95% is coming somewhere else. It's not these genes, these 6 genes which produce diabetes for us. It's the environment. And what is the environment? The environment has changed dramatically. I don't have to tell you that. In the olden days, people carried weights on their head. Now we carry cell phones. Okay? No more weight than that. Children played in the field. At least when I was a youngster, we went to play. 2 hours we played in the field. Today also they play, but they play like this. Virtual football. They sit down together and then they play computer games or they video games. That's where they get their fun. Okay, it's all simulations. There is no more real play. Okay, because they say it's not safe. We don't have time. There are many factors. We won't go into that. Then the meals we ate were frugal. We had some amount of rice, some amount of chapati, lots of other things. We had a lot of physical activity. Today, our youngsters are totally different. We didn't even know what IT was when we grew. There were no computers. So how can you talk about IT when I was there? Only 1980s, we got our first computer. We didn't even have television until 1969. Okay. So the world we lived in was very different from what we are living in. By 69, I already finished high school. So in high school, the first computer, when the first television came, I was not even sure that it will work. Somebody will come in that, and you can see pictures. That is where we were. Imagine where we have gone today. So with that, what these boys are all working to American timing, but they paid in dollars. What happens? What do they get in the night? They'll get Pepsi, they'll get cola, they'll get, I'm not naming the brand, but soft drinks, and then they'll eat all their burgers and they'll eat all the pizzas, and that's what they can order online. Swiggy will probably deliver it to them at any time. So this is the problem, because calories go up, sugar goes up, everything goes up. Okay, physical activity goes down. They're sitting all the time. And then urbanization. We've heard of pollution these days. A lot of it we talk about. Pollution causing diabetes. Apart from producing cancer or bronchitis or asthma, pollution also produces diabetes now. New theory. Okay. Now, where is evidence for all this? Just because you eat more food, you get diabetes? Well, you don't even have to eat any type of food. This is just rice. In Chennai, we looked at what is the first quartile, the lowest 25% of the carbohydrate rice intake. Next. Okay. When the carbohydrate intake goes up from 200 grams to 400 grams, diabetes goes up 4 times. So if it is 8% in the lowest quartile, it's 32% in the upper quartile. So it's not just a marginal increase, it's a huge increase. And this is not because those who ate rice were also lying in bed all the time. It's already corrected for physical activity, smoking, family history, age, socioeconomic status. After correcting all that, carbohydrate seems to be something which pulls out all the insulin from your body and makes you diabetic. Okay. But then that doesn't mean, so for that we produced a kind of a high fiber rice, which has a lower glycemic index. You can see that if you look at glucose, which is 100%, The normal white rice has a glycemic index of about 80. Our high fiber rice is only 60. So if you take rice, eat brown rice or some of these newer rice forms which don't increase your sugar all that much. Okay, and this is a continuous glucose monitoring curve to show that even what you eat matters. The red is with the usual white rice and the blue is with the high fiber rice. Now, that does not mean that physical activity is not important. It's probably as important or more important. Here is another study where we looked at the physical activity in Chennai. Heavy physical activity is not people who are running marathon. These are people who walked every day and did some kind of exercise. We call it as heavy. Then the light is the totally sedentary ones who don't do anything. 3 times more diabetes, 3 times more. Now here we have corrected for the rice, we have corrected for what they eat, their family history, and so on. So independent risk factor. If you add these two, physical inactivity plus more diet and more carbohydrate, 50% of all diabetes can be explained by that. If these two you correct, you can reverse diabetes by 50% or prevent diabetes 50%. Then I don't mind if you go to 3rd place and get the bronze medal or don't get a medal at all. In this, we were out of that medal race completely and we go to 10th position, I'll be very happy. And we can do that if we just focus on 2 things. One is carbohydrate intake and the food, and then physical activity. Okay, how do we increase physical activity of people is a question. It's okay if it's a very motivated person, but the whole population, 1.3 billion people, make them more physically active. Is it possible? Well, we can do that, but then your mindset has to change. Now here is a 24-hour fitness center. This is not a photoshopped one. It's an actual picture. What do people think? I have to go to the gym now. 24-hour fitness is open 24 hours. You can go and do your exercise. But you can see nobody is taking the stairs. No, everybody is taking a escalator to go to a fitness center to do exercise. So in their mind, when they see an escalator, they have to use it. Nobody is thinking, oh, why not I use my steps? I'll get another 50 steps like that, going up, coming down, I'll get a few more steps. So it's our mind. We have to change our mind if we have to really increase our physical activity. In this context, we tell youngsters go and walk. They're not willing to do it. So we have actually started a physical activity program called as Tandav. And Tandav is a form of dance. It's kind of Bollywood dance where just 10 minutes is sufficient. It's a high intensity interval training, HIIT. For 10 minutes, we're able to do this Tandav dance. It's equal to 1 hour of walking or probably half an hour of jogging. Okay, you'll start sweating, your heart rate goes up so much. It's innovative, interesting, sustainable, less time, and it's socially acceptable. So even young girls can do that who otherwise would hesitate to do that. They can just put it on in their house and do it inside their house. You don't have to go to a gym, you don't have to go, and of course it's a lot of fun. Okay, so let me now take you to the last part of my talk where I'm going to talk about 2 success stories. Now, all this is fine. You can introduce Tandav, you can introduce physical activity, talk about it. How do you change the community? And is it possible to change the community? Now, normally a doctor only sits in his clinic and writes, or her clinic, and writes a prescription to the patients who come and treat their complications. We said, no, we have to go far beyond that. We are into public health also. So not only we should treat those who come to us, we said, let's go out into the community and try to prevent diabetes itself. The first epidemiological study, before we went to Indiab and took up 124,000 people, whole country, we started very humble. We started in 2 areas in Chennai. Tirumangalam, Asiat Colony, which is shown on my left, and T Nagar, which is on probably your right. This is the slum. Okay, so middle income group, low income group. Question we asked is diabetes the same in both these places? Obviously not. We always talk about Chennai as a whole, Delhi as a whole. Within that, are there differences? We found huge differences. For example, in the middle income group at that time, this is 2001, 18 years ago, it was 12% in the middle income group in Tirumangalam. It was only half in the low income group. Because the low income group, they exercised more, they were thinner, they didn't have that much money to eat out or eat fatty foods or sugary foods, and they also exercised more. And they were thinner. So they had half of diabetes. Now, the story didn't end there. This itself was interesting, got published in a good British journal. So that's a different issue. When we finished that, we said, okay, now we have got work to do. We have, meanwhile, you remember that slide I showed you where the diabetes increasing 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. This is when you are around 12. Okay. So I said it's going to go up like this. It'll probably reach 20, 25. I predicted this 10, 15 years ago. And I said that, okay, can we do something about it? And so just watching it increase. Is it reversible? Can we make it, less? Now for that, what you have to do is you have to start physical activity in encouraging these people to do physical activity. So what we did was we went back to this colony. We forgot about at that time, we didn't concentrate on the low income group because they are already having so many other problems. They had tuberculosis problem, they had dengue, malaria, they had all kinds of other communicable diseases they haven't even tackled. And they're already thin and the diabetes prevalence is low. So I said, let us, as an experiment, let's start with the middle income group where it is rapidly rising. In any case, that is 80% of the whole country. So he said, let's focus on that. So we found that they were living in a colony. I showed you that picture where they were living, this colony, okay, where the cars are parked. So typically they were living in a colony like that. So we said, okay, can you guys start increasing your activity? They said, oh, we don't have a place to walk. As we were talking to them, we realized that just near their colony was a large plot of land. So we said, what is this land meant for? So they said, well, we are going to build another colony 2. Asiad colony 2 is going to come. This colony 1, this is going to be colony 2. So we said, we had series of discussions with them and we said, can you not put that to better use? Can you not build a park? In this whole area, there is no park. So imagine if you have a park, you can start walking, others can start walking. It becomes a great national treasure there if you build a park there rather than building one more set of flats. So they first went to the government. Government didn't support them. They said, we don't have money to build a park like that. So we said, why don't you do it? You create history. Why don't you raise money yourself? How much does it cost to build a park? Take permission from the government and you build it yourself. You'll be rewriting history. Nowhere in the world they would have done that. Probably, definitely not in India they would have done. So public building a park for yourself. They liked the idea. And then this is what happened. So this is Asiad colony. They built this beautiful park. That's the original park, and that's the park where the park was built. The part of the park was built. So you can see they built this park entirely with their own money. Okay. There is walking tracks, music being played. People can walk and see small quotations there. Motivational messages, and suddenly people had a place to walk. Oh, battery's running low. Can you do something? Plug it in. Sundar. Quick. Sorry, there's a battery problem. We'll just get that fixed in a minute. Okay, so this is what it is. Most importantly, there was a place for children also to play. Okay, we'll just see that in a minute. You can see now children also have a place to play where they didn't have a safe place to play. Okay, what happened was that suddenly the exercise levels went up. We started this as a natural experiment, community-based experiment in prevention and reversal. And we found suddenly the exercise level, only 13% of people were walking or doing exercise before this park was built. Suddenly it's gone to 52%. That's a 277% increase in exercise. You may say still 40% are not walking. 40%, you can't get 100% of the society to change, that too within a year or two. You don't. Eventually they will join. If you get 60-70%, you should be very, very, very happy that you have done. Now, this gave us a chance to look at, so what did this do to diabetes? You remember, by this time what had happened, as I had predicted, the prevalence of diabetes increased 13. This is somewhere around 2000 when we went, 13%, 12%. Became 14, 16, 18, 20%. We went back around about 6 or 8 years later and then looked at Asiad colony again and looked at the one where we didn't do any intervention at all. Now, first, before we went back to Asiad colony, we studied some colonies near the Asiad colony where they didn't have the park. By the time the average was 18%, it had already crossed 22, 23% in some of those colonies. Okay, so we said if Asiad colony has less than that, this must be the effect of walking. Why else would one thing nearby have 20% and this colony alone having less? It must be the effect of exercise. So we did that. So we went back. Originally, the figure was 12%. We studied the same colony. Now we're very happy to find only 15%. Remember, they're also 6 years older, and diabetes with age goes up. So with all that, no significant increase. Almost we have reversed it. We have put a hold on the diabetes rise. But then that's the good news. Now came the bad news. Okay. Remember this colony? We left them out and we said, oh, they won't get diabetes, leave them alone. We were wrong. Okay. Their diabetes not only went up, it shot up. And now it's 15%. So 135% increase in these poor people. Totally unexpected. We didn't expect it at all. It's like my father saying only migrant Indians having it. That's a perception we have. Oh, poor people won't get diabetes. We're totally wrong. Okay. Now we know it's probably unethical to do it. But that time we didn't have the evidence. So it was okay at that time. But it turned out to be a natural experiment. So the good news is that by just building a park and increasing the walking, they could prevent diabetes. These people marked increase in diabetes because we didn't do anything for them. We didn't tell them about prevention. So this is an example of translational research through community empowerment. Once we empower the community, if you want to reverse diabetes, you want to prevent diabetes, then you must involve the community. Just as a doctor sitting in a clinic writing a prescription, you're not going to touch it. You'll keep on increasing the diabetes because they'll come to you, you'll keep treating them, and that's it. Okay? You want to step out into the community, then you can prevent diabetes. Now, that was not a randomized clinical study. We had a lot of problem publishing that because the reviewers are not convinced. They said, how do you know it's because of the park? Where is the proof? I said, I can't produce proof. I can only tell you they use the park. Therefore, this thing, their weight didn't go up, the sugar didn't go up. That's all I can say. Then reluctantly, they published it saying, no, this is not good science. Anyway, we accept what you're saying, but this is not proof. You have to really prove that you can prevent diabetes. For that, you have to do an RCT. A randomized clinical trial. Remember, for the RCT, the Nobel Prize in Economics was given this year. They did an RCT in economics, and for that, they got a Nobel Prize. So we did this. What we did was we took a project called as the DCLIP project, Diabetes Community Lifestyle Improvement Program. Again, our collaborators were Dr. Venkat Narayan, and two of these girls, Mary Beth and Lisa, got their PhD working in Chennai. From US, they came to do their PhD. So the DCLIP program, what we did was we took people with pre-diabetes, asked them to exercise. We measured everything. This was a proper RCT. And a control group, we just gave them advice, but we didn't follow them up. We just told them we have to prove that this one really works. The intervention group got 24 lifestyle classes. We went talk in the same place where I'm sitting now and giving the talk. They would come here. We would make them exercise. We taught them about how to eat healthy and everything. The results were amazing. They were published in Diabetes Care. And what we showed was that there was a 36% reduction in the incidence of diabetes through this simple lifestyle modification. Now, this is proof that diabetes can be reversed. You can make them normal. And that's why I titled it by saying reversal of diabetes is possible. I'm not saying it's probable and so on, or maybe possible. I'm saying it is possible because here 36% of people are prevented from getting diabetes. Imagine now we are saying 100 million to 134 million. 30% of them, if you reduce, some 20-30 million people in India can prevent diabetes just by walking and cutting down on their diet and eating healthy. It's so simple. It's a low-hanging fruit. It has to be done. Okay, so that's what we said. It can effectively reduce the diabetes incidence. Finally, about rural India. All this is urban. Okay, in urban India, at least there are clinics, there are hospitals, there are specialized centers. People can either government, private, people can go anywhere. Rural India is a different ball game altogether. Unfortunately, since 72% of the people in India live in rural areas, the majority of the diabetes, we talk about 70 million or whatever million, the majority of them are in rural areas where there's poverty, there's illiteracy, transportation problems, all kinds of problems. So we said, and 75% of the doctors practice in urban areas. 70% of the population lives in rural areas. Complete mismatch. And it's very difficult to tell all the now go to the village, settle there, and look after all the people with diabetes. It doesn't happen. People want schools, they want education, they want this, they want that. So many things. And so people are not, kind of enamored by a rural area. And so it becomes difficult. So we'll have to find different models to do that. So we said, first, let's keep the philosophy. What's the philosophy? I call this as the 6A test. What is 6A test? Must make diabetes care available, accessible, affordable, appropriate, acceptable, and accountable in rural India. Now, how do you do this? We'll have to take rural people and do that. There are not too many doctors there. So we'll have to get non-medical people to do that. Around this time, the owner of a village called Chunampet in Kanchipuram district. Now, that's a map for those of you who don't know where Kanchipuram is. It is below, south of Chennai. And within that district, if you blow up in the next one, the bottommost southern part of that is a village called Chunampet. So Zamindar called me and said, I want to give your institution a piece of land, several acres. And what will you do if you do? If I give you this? Because he is retiring and he's kind of bachelor, giving away all his land. He gave to the government, schools, everywhere he is giving away land. To the Agro Foundation, everywhere he gave. So he said, for diabetes, can you do something? We said, yes, we'll come up with a Chunampet model for rural diabetes care. We got some funding from the World Diabetes Foundation and from ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, and we took up this particular project. What we did was, excuse me, so we built a van. So we got a chassis from Ashok Leyland, and then we put this together. We built the whole van. On top of it is the satellite given by ISRO, and inside was a virtual diabetes hospital, like you would see, or a clinic, like everywhere you would see. Facility to screen for everything. What we did was we went house to house, hut to hut, literally, in this village, took young men and women from the village, trained them here in Chennai to take heights, weights, blood pressure, and so on. You don't need a doctor to do all this. We taught them what to do, and then checked sugars on the spot. And if they had diabetes, all they had to do was to enter the van, which is parked nearby, and there they can look at all the complications of diabetes right next to the place where people lived. The whole project was done free of cost. We look at the eyes, take pictures. The picture is sent to Chennai, where our ophthalmologist can talk to the patient and say, this is your eye, that is the lens which I'm taking out now, that is where you get cataract. We are not looking at that. We are looking at the back portion of the eye, that is the retina, which can get affected due to diabetes. Right now it's normal. Every year you come back and have the checkup done. Now that's the land where the Zamindar gave us, where we built a rural center. The doctor you saw there is Dr. Rakesh, who's from that village. So we took him, brought him, trained him, and he still works for us. For many, many years now, he's been running that clinic. The results were amazing. So not only one village, we adopted another 41 villages. So 42 villages we took on, 200,000 people. We gave them diabetes awareness. In these 42 villages, the adult population we took and then screened them all, 27,000 people. We got data on the complication of diabetes and then started treating them in our local, the rural center there, which we had built there in the land given by the Zamindar. And very quickly, the blood sugar levels started coming down. Now look at the advantages for the rural people. They don't have to travel to Chennai. They get it right at their doorstep. We're using very low cost treatment, and they don't have to take a day off to come. They don't have to bring a relative with them, nothing. It's all done there. Now it's about 10 years and the results have been amazing. This is one of the big success stories, and this attracted a lot of attention. The Lancet in 2011 produced a series on healthcare in India. This article number 3, where the conclusion is the Chunampet Rural Diabetes Project thus seems to be a good model for delivering preventive and therapeutic diabetes healthcare to rural areas. Once this came in the Lancet, the whole world saw it. Very soon we had CNN, Discovery Channel, Le Monde in France, and many. The Jugaad is a book about health, about innovation in India. There's a full chapter on the Chunampet model. In fact, this is the only health chapter in that particular book. BBC, they all came and they wrote about the Chunampet project. And this has been one of the most successful rural projects in the world. So I'm going to conclude here and then take questions by saying that the diabetes epidemic in India is still spiraling upwards. The South Asian phenotype is responsible for the huge increase in prevalence rates of diabetes in India. But using the DCLIP trial, we showed that diabetes is preventable and reversible, in fact. And through community empowerment, it's possible to scale up these preventive measures. If this kind of model that we set up in Chunampet is replicated across India, we'll be able to really tackle the rural situation in rural India. Our late president, ex-president Dr. Abdul Kalam talked about the Pura concept, providing urban amenities in rural areas. He called it as Pura. That's exactly what you've done. Whatever we have in urban areas, we give it in rural areas. And the rural population does not have to migrate to the urban areas all the time. They can get all the comforts there. Using telemedicine, in which India is very strong, it's possible to reach out to remote rural areas in India. Jagdish Chandra Bose, J.C. Bose, said that one dedicates himself or herself wholly for a great cause. The closed doors shall open, and the seemingly impossible will become possible for him. So once you have an idea, then everything kind of falls into place. The whole universe kind of conspires to make good things happen. So I'd like to say Jai Hind and thank you, and happy World Diabetes Day to all of you. I'm going to stop here and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. We will now be taking the questions shared by the attendees.
Sure.
So the first question is by Dr. Sheetal. What can be done to curb the increasing incidence of early onset diabetes in our youth?
So the principles are the same. What I just mentioned, prevention of diabetes, I said. So one of the worries is not just the increase in the numbers of people, but that it's affecting young people. So Dr. Sheetal has very correctly pointed to that. So instead of getting diabetes at 50, you start getting it 40, 30, 20, and now even in teenagers. Type 2 diabetes. I'm not talking about type 1, which comes in childhood. Type 2, the regular type of diabetes. So if you start young, from childhood, increasing physical activity. I could not present all the studies that we do. We have a huge project called as the Orange Project, which is run in some 80 schools in Chennai, where we go and increase physical activity, healthy eating, reduction of obesity in schools. And I know that in many other cities it's being done. If you start that, what happens is that from the beginning, children know that putting on weight is not good. And so we involve them in fun activities and so on. That's where Tandav and so on will come in. Just 12 minutes of dance, 10 minutes, and you can reduce diabetes. So if you get it young, the problem is that you need only 20, 30 years to get complications. So somebody gets it when they're 15, add 20 years to that and you're only 35 years old or 40 years old when you have all the complications of diabetes. If you get it when you're 40 or 50, then you add 25 years, 20 years to that, you're 70, 75 years old. And India's lifespan today is 69 for women and 67 for men. So the idea is to give a full lifespan without any complications. I'm happy to tell you that just recently, one of my patients completed his 100th birthday and he is doing well. He's still alive. He's doing very well. He has 60 years of diabetes. And after his 100th birthday, his memory is razor sharp. He's still walking about. He does all his activities. And we have got over 300 patients who have completed 90 years of age, and I salute them on World Diabetes Day because they are showing to the world that a person with diabetes can have a long and healthy life. But the earlier you get it, the challenge becomes more because more aggressive when you get it at young age. So Dr. Sheetal, thank you for the question. We must start very early, right from school, right from the age 5 to 10. Then only you can prevent diabetes in young age. Next question. Have we lost?
So the second question is from Nimishika. So she wants to ask that there is not much discussion around pre-diabetes or essentially prevention of full-blown diabetes. So what needs to be highlighted to the public and what can be done to bring down the rates of diabetes in our country like that was done in San Francisco?
Yeah, so in San Francisco, nothing special was done except that they are, see, look at the people who live in the US. They are technocrats, they are doctors, they are lawyers, they belong to a different socioeconomic status. Their education levels are much higher. You cannot compare a person living in San Francisco with a slum dweller in Chennai, for example. They're completely different. And that is how they're able to do it. They realized that they have to do a treadmill or go for exercise or walk or cycle. They started cutting down on their rice quantity or their wheat quantity. They started eating more protein, more fiber, more vegetables, healthier salads, and so on. So that is how the people in the Indians in San Francisco did that. If you're able to do the same principles here, walk to work, cycle to work, or after you come back, go for your walk, or early morning finish off your walking, stretching, yoga before you go to work. And then when you're eating, don't overeat and don't eat too much of carbs. Cut it down. Eat healthy fats, take nuts or fruits or vegetables in large quantities, but cut down on the carbohydrate that you take. And then reduce your stress by doing yoga, meditation, pranayama, and so on. This is enough. Nothing great you need to do. Simple lifestyle if you do. I would start the day by looking at what time you go to bed. Okay, if you go to bed at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, you're not going to get up in the morning and go for your walk. So fix a time for going to bed, 10 o'clock, 10:30, some reasonable time. And then you'll get up early. Automatically your day starts early. You can go for your walk, finish everything, then go to work. You're finished your exercise for the day. And then you be a little careful through the day. Add in a little yoga or meditation either in the morning or evening according to your time. If you just allot it and if you're conscious about it, one of the simple ways in which I recommend is introduce one of the apps in your phone. Everybody has a phone. So put on either, whichever program is there for you, with Android phone or Apple or whichever, you put that there and try to get your 10,000 steps. You focus on that. Whenever you find a staircase, use it because you're going to burn calories. Okay. And if you're coming back from work, get off 2 stops earlier and walk from there. You get your exercise built in straight away. Play with your dog, play with your child, go for a walk, go something. You be active all the time. Instead of being a couch potato, you do that. Very simple. If you lose 5 kilograms in weight, you can prevent diabetes completely. It's not at all complicated. You can easily do it, but it must be sustained. Next question.
The third question is from Anjali. She wants to know, saying that she has diabetes and asthma. My asthma does not allow me to go for a walk, especially during high pollution in Delhi. So what should I do for exercise?
So do Tandav, do it at home, do dance, do walking, do jogging, get a treadmill at home and do that. Get wherever you get steps, you try to do that. I know in high pollution areas it is difficult. Try to find safer places, and of course we should all join together and reduce the pollution, because that's going to be for people who can afford it. That's fine. What about the common man? So I think we all have a commitment to reduce pollution in this country. Otherwise, the death rates are going to go up, and I'm sure the government will take enough precautions for that. But keep it in mind. Once it is registered in your mind that you have to do the physical activity, you will get it done. One simple way which I tell is, okay, we are all on the phone all the time. Why should you sit down and, if I could walk about and give this talk, I'd have walked and given the talk. Unfortunately, I have to focus here, so I'm sitting down here. But believe me when I tell you that I took the steps when I came up. I didn't take an elevator. So if you, put into your phone the 10,000 steps you have to get, and before you go to sleep, you get that 10,000 steps, otherwise you're not going to sleep. Once you put something like that in, it becomes very easy to do that, and find the best way in the circumstances that you are placed in to get it. Next.
The next question is from Ajit. He says, is it really reversal? Is diabetes really reversal, or is it just putting the progression on hold?
It doesn't matter what you call it, because diabetes is something which even when you're born, you have a gene which makes you prone to diabetes. In a sense, it is reversal, because when you look at a natural history of diabetes, you've got a stage of normal glucose tolerance, then you've got a stage of pre-diabetes, and then you've got a stage of diabetes. So in the early diabetes stage, if you go to pre-diabetes, it's reversal. From pre-diabetes stage become normal, it is reversal. Okay, so it is reversal. I didn't use the word cure. I didn't say you're cured. Now you do whatever you want, nothing is going to happen. I very carefully use the word remission or reversal. It is reversal. If you do a glucose tolerance test and you find it's come back to normal, you don't have diabetes, what else is it if it's not reversal? So it is reversal. But with age, okay, there are certain non-modifiable factors. You can't change your family history. You can't change your father and mother. Okay, you may adopt another father and mother, but you're already born. Your biological father and mother, they're already given you the genes. You can't change that. age, you can put dye and, make yourself look younger, but you're not going to change the aging process. So age and family history are non-modifiable risk factors. So if your age and your family history is very strong, you may get diabetes, but it doesn't matter. I'm telling you, people are living up to 100 years of age with diabetes. So the later you get it, the better it is. The later you get it, the milder it is, and therefore it won't affect you. As I said, if you get diabetes when you're 20, your risk of going blind or having heart attack or kidney failure by the time you're 45 or 50 is very high. If you're able to postpone it to say 50 or 60 when you get diabetes, you'll be 80 or 90 when you have the risk of getting diabetes. And even there, the risk is much less because it's a milder diabetes when you get it when you're older. So in your lifetime, you're not going to suffer due to diabetes. That is how these people have all crossed 90, 100. My series of patients which I just published, showing you that they have lived their life. And so what if they have diabetes? So what if they have a little bit of sugar? They've lived their life and they've proven that diabetes didn't stop them from doing anything. They lived to 100 years of age in good health. So what if you have a little diabetes? So in fact, that diabetes helped them to live longer because that was a cause for their motivation. And that is what in the first place helped them to do all this, kept them going. So in a way, a little diabetes is good because it'll teach you, oh, be careful with diet, walk more, reduce stress. You've got a motivation to do all that. If you don't have this, there's no motivation to do that. So I wouldn't say that if a little diabetes comes at theoretically, oh, I didn't fully prevent it, it came. It came, but it didn't affect my lifestyle. If there was a magic pill I can give you to get rid of diabetes and never bring it back again, curing diabetes, I'll give you that pill, but I don't have that pill. We're working towards it. Maybe one day we'll have a magic pill by which you can prevent diabetes. Today, what you can do is, can you reduce the rate at which this epidemic is rising? Can you flatten it? Can you lower it? That is a whole principle, eminently possible. We have shown you through the published research studies that we have done that this is not hype. We're not just bluffing and telling you something fake news. We're giving you exact statistics as to what is happening, and it's eminently doable.
The last question is from Abhineet. So he wants to know Abhineet wants to know why is it increasing in the case of newborns?
Well, in the case of newborns, we don't have data that it is increasing all that much. What I mentioned was in the youngsters, and when I said youngsters, I went up to adolescents. So I said, when you're talking about type 2 diabetes, it comes when you're 10, 15, 18, because there's gross obesity by that time. Children by 5 are already obese. By the time they come 10, 12, if father and mother have diabetes, they're already getting diabetes. So up to that we have seen. In fact, my youngest type 2 patients, I had 4 of them below 10 years of age. And my youngest was 7 years old. I've not seen below 7 years. I have not seen in my life, nor in the world literature, is there anybody below 7 having type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes comes usually above 1 year of age. So that's a childhood disease, an autoimmune disease. And because of autoimmunity, the children, that child's beta cells get knocked off and they get diabetes and they have to take insulin all their life. Below that, what you're talking about, congenital or newborn diabetes, that is called neonatal diabetes. That is due to a genetic mutation in the ABCC8 gene or the KCNJ11 mutation. Now, one particular mutation, one gene, is responsible for producing neonatal diabetes. And by the way, neonatal diabetes, and we have one center in India which looks at these mutations. We have a genetic lab which does this. And if a child below 6 months of age gets diabetes, most likely they have neonatal diabetes, which responds to tablets. You don't even need insulin. We do the genetic testing, say, hey, you got this particular mutation, stop your insulin, take tablets. And with the tablet, the child is able to get it. It's like a miracle. And we have now several hundred such children referred from all over the country to us where we have been able to successfully take them off insulin. So neonatal diabetes, we don't have evidence that neonatal diabetes is increasing. Awareness is increasing. So we are picking up a few hundred cases I have. It's not like millions of children at birth have diabetes. Diabetes usually sets in after 15, 20 years of age. Even type 1 diabetes, where you take insulin shots, it is there. But it is a few cases per 1 lakh population. Take 1 lakh population, we find 20 such children. Okay. But type 2 diabetes, we are talking about 10%, 20%. That means every 100, you have 10, 20 such people having diabetes. That is a real epidemic about which we are worried. The other types of diabetes there are 40 types of diabetes, in fact. So we must be aware of these. That is what we call as precision diabetes. That's what we do at our center. Precision diabetes, trying to find out which type of diabetes you have and then giving the treatment for that. But not all those rare forms of diabetes are increasing in epidemic proportions. Only type 2 diabetes which is increasing in epidemic proportions.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan, for presenting the webinar on reversal of diabetes. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take all the questions due to time constraints. If you have any other questions, please send them to ethealthworld.com.
I'd be happy to answer them if they send to me by email. Thank you. By ET.
It was an engaging and insightful talk, and we hope all the participants have enjoyed the session. The recording of this webinar will be made available on ethealthworld.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.